The streets say something about who we are. And New York streets should say, number one, we walk. Number two, we take transit, and we bike, and we eat, and we enjoy, and we like music, and all the other things. We dance in the streets.
That's Sam Schwartz, a lifelong New Yorker and transit guru who's known around these parts as Gridlock Sam.
The word gridlock came about during the 1980 transit strike, at least publicly. I was an assistant DOT commissioner at the time. So I put this thing called Gridlock, 2 words, Gridlock Prevention Plan. And when City Hall saw that, they said, we don't know what gridlock is. Let's get the guy who knows what it is to prevent it. And so gridlock has been associated with me ever since. So I released it to the lexicon.
We had a socially distanced, fully masked meetup with Sam over the summer to take a look at how New York City streets were opening up to people, not just cars, in response to COVID-19.
City street space, which was totally for cars, can be used for sitting areas, for dining areas, for bikeways.
Even though Sam was really excited about these new open streets, when we happened across one on the Upper West Side, he found its design was, well, lacking.
So here is a street that's closed with a wooden sawhorse. These sawhorses were old when I started 50 years ago.
Right.
And you can't completely trust the cars. There's a car going right through, right around.
So the sign says, share the road, do not enter except local traffic, 5 miles per hour.
Right, so that guy is not local. He's continuing. He's going through the next block. Pedestrians be damned. Dog walkers be damned.
This person too.
Barely slowing down. And there could be children playing. There could be somebody darting out. And absolutely no concern. And that person was not going 5 miles an hour. Was doing about 15 on it.
Just to get to a red light. Yeah.
Yeah, and going through the red light. Through the red light.
We're handing out tickets left and right here.
Our imaginary tickets.
Yeah, I thought those were the good days when I was doing it.
Even though Sam wanted to give a lot of tickets to this particular driver, he insists that he's not about taking away streets from cars completely.
I'm not anti-car. I want to say balanced transportation. I also want to say cars in urban areas go very slowly. Nowadays, we're killing pedestrians at an alarming rate. So we need a balance. The cars have to go slower. And how do the cars go slower? Not by just putting up speed limit signs. That doesn't do it. Because you don't have a cop everywhere. You don't have a camera everywhere. You need to do it through design.
As we walked through the streets of the Upper West Side, Sam saw examples of the power of good design everywhere.
Take a look over here.
Sam walked us towards a crosswalk, where the sidewalk had kind of been extended out, and the space for the car had been narrowed.
So this is called a neck down, and this was done circa 1971 when I started with the traffic department. So this is about 50 years old. It's the first attempt at trying to tame a street through design. And you could see the traffic has to go more slowly. Nobody can go around them as they go through. The pedestrian has only about 15 feet to cross as opposed to 30 feet to cross. So the pedestrian's exposure is a lot less over here. Here we see a father with the child in the stroller, and within 4 seconds he crossed the street. As opposed to, it would have been 8 seconds. 4 extra seconds, multiply it by 8 million people crossing, and you increase the probability of crashes.
If Sam were in charge again, he has some ideas for how he'd transform the streets of today into the safer, more flexible, more responsive streets of the future.
We should use our streets in a smart way temporally. We should think of the street of the future as one that does change during the day of the week, during the season, and we should use some technology and human power combined to make it happen. We can do almost anything technologically. These are the 2020s.
Welcome to City of the Future, a podcast from Sidewalk Labs.
Each episode, we explore ideas and innovations that could transform our cities.
We're your hosts. I'm Vanessa Quirk.
And I'm Eric Jaffe.
And in this episode, we're talking about an idea that could allow one of our most precious public spaces to serve the needs of everyone.
Flexible streets.
So how do we get to that vision of more flexible, responsive streets?
Well, according to Gridlock Sam, the first step is data.
Throughout his storied career, Sam has gotten into a lot of political battles over streets, and data has given him the leverage he's needed to turn plans into realities.
For example, Sam told us about a controversial effort in the 1970s to reevaluate the number of lanes open to cars in Central Park.
The first thing Sam and his colleagues did was just hang out in the park counting cars. But the technology that they had to use was rudimentary.
Traffic counts in the 1970s were largely done by pneumatic tubes. And every time there was an impact, every 2 impacts would be 1 car. How accurate was it? Within 10 to 20%. It wasn't particularly that accurate. And then sometimes people in communities who wanted red lights, traffic signals, they would jump on it to make the counts show up.
Since pneumatic tubes weren't always reliable, a lot of the data collection for that Central Park study had to be done by hand.
Somebody stood out with a clipboard, and we have these counters, and it has like 5 or 6 buttons depending, and it'll say left turn, right turn, straight through. So we looked at the data, and what we found is very easily we could take the 3 lanes and make them 2 lanes. And it's really the first time lanes were taken away from cars since the turn of the century.
Sam was only able to make this real, meaningful change because of the data. And today, data is more important than ever.
5 years ago, when it came to parking, it was all about the equipment. Well, in the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen a drastic change to data.
Mitch Osur is the Director of Parking and Downtown Services for the City of Aspen, Colorado.
Like Sam, Mitch has had his fair share of battles over street space, and he's seen the power of data to change people's minds.
For example, 4 years ago, he decided to double the parking prices in the downtown core. Businesses were outraged. They worried that customers would be scared away and sales would plummet.
So I told them all, give me 3 months. At the end of 3 months, you're either going to kiss me or you're going to want to punch me, one or the other. They all called me 3 months in and said, we can't believe it, but your plan actually worked.
While locals were deterred by the new prices, visiting shoppers weren't, and they now had even more access to the shops.
And we had a 17% increase in sales tax revenue for the 3-month test.
So nobody punched you.
No, they actually wanted to kiss me because it worked so well.
Mitch is always thinking about how to test out solutions that could make Aspen streets better for shoppers, restaurants, pedestrians, and visitors.
And the biggest obstacle currently facing the city is trucks, which every day dangerously clutter up the downtown's limited curb space.
You know, our problems are really driven by FedEx and UPS and all the other truckers coming to town. And on a busy day, these trucks are double parking, maybe even triple parking. And, that's not safe for anybody.
To help figure out a solution to this curb congestion, Mitch and the city of Aspen teamed up with Coord, a Sidewalk Labs incubated company.
Coord is an online platform to help cities manage their curb space.
That's Dawn Miller, head of policy and partnerships at Coord, which has developed an app for commercial drivers that lets them see the location and availability of parking or loading zones.
So they can see when that's available and where they want to go. They can put a hold on it, and when they get there, they book in and pay for the space. And so this way they have really a greater incentive and information to go to those safe and legal loading spaces rather than kind of falling into some old habits of doing things like blocking crosswalks or double parking.
The app doesn't just benefit drivers. It helps cities get more information about what's happening at their curbs.
I want to know the length of stay. How long are these trucks staying? Are they staying for 15 minutes? Or are they staying for 2 hours? What time of day are they coming? So we're really excited to learn how this works so we can make decisions on how our loading zone should be moving forward.
This information could give Aspen some ideas for pilots so they can figure out what policy decisions might be best for the city.
And the less expensive the pilot, the better.
I'm a big believer in experimenting before you either spend a lot of money or do something else. So let's do it inexpensively, give it a shot. You'll know within 90 days whether it works or not, and then you can go ahead the next year and put it in. So that's kind of the position we're in.
Due to COVID, Don is seeing that cities are much more open to these kinds of experimentations, and not just for their curbs, but their entire streets.
What I think we've all seen out of COVID times is that they've opened up people's imaginations, that a street doesn't have to be parallel parking or angled parking on each side. They can be a lot more. And I think a lot of the transportation community has wanted to do a lot of different things for a long time, but it was politically very difficult to get people to accept new ideas. Hopefully, a lot of cities are like Aspen, where they want to keep some of these new things, and that it then going forward makes them more open to trying different things, because we tried something in an emergency and hey, it actually was really cool.
Yeah, I'll second what Dawn just said. I think that in Aspen in particular, the COVID experience has really opened people's eyes. And just, this winter, we're thinking about actually grooming some of the streets so that people can cross-country ski on some of the roads around town. Things that, again, last year never would have been part of a conversation.
Ski lanes! That sounds like an amazing way to use the streets in Aspen.
I love it. It's not that easy, though, for every city to do pilots like this. Aspen has access to affordable technology through their partnership with Coord, but in general, it can be really expensive for cities to collect accurate street data.
It's certainly a pain point, which is why some of the folks at Sidewalk have been working on a solution.
My name's Nick Jonas. I'm a creative technologist at Sidewalk Labs.
Cool. And I hate to ask this question, Nick. You're not the Nick Jonas of Nick Jonas fame.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I have to ask
no,
it.
we can...
Can you clarify?
I can clarify. I am not that one. I'm not in a boy band. Yeah.
Nick is part of a band of folks who've been working on a new vehicle occupancy sensor. They call it Pebble.
It's basically a magnetometer and a optical infrared sensor that basically it detects a shift in the magnetic field as a car drives over it.
Right.
And,
but I mean, so I don't know what a magnetometer or an infrared thing looks like, but to me it just looks like a piece of plastic.
It's a piece of plastic.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, some people will call it a puck. It's a
like a
round
hockey puck.
plastic housing for the sensor.
So if I put my hand over it, waving it around, I'm disrupting its infrared light stuff.
Not quite.
Okay.
So the way it works is it needs a big piece of metal like a car to disrupt the magnetic field.
Nick explained that it's the magnetometer that turns on the higher powered infrared optical sensor, which is what lets the app know that something is there. So because I am not made of metal, I don't disrupt the magnetic field, and hence I do not trigger the sensor.
Right, and so I'm guessing that if Pebble can only detect whether or not a vehicle is present, that means it can't pick up any identifiable information, right?
Yeah, it was designed with privacy in mind. But the main selling point for Pebble is that they're affordable. And a big part of that is how easy they are to install. What used to require construction crews opening up streets is now easy enough for Nick and I to do in just a couple of minutes.
I am just peeling off the plastic of this goopy, basically a sticker that we'll use to just stick it to the ground.
I got it.
And then you just step on it to apply some pressure.
No!
There you go. Now it's not going anywhere. All right. And then, you'll see in the app. There it is.
Oh, there he is.
It is healthy and connected.
Woo! Welcome to the world, little Pebble.
So, no cars over it. You should also be able to see its occupancy state, and
Right.
it's showing available.
Oh, yeah.
That was quick.
That took a couple minutes.
But we weren't there just to install Pebbles. Nick Jonas had some testing to do.
We actually haven't tested with a motorcycle, so that's why I'm here today.
You're hearing it here, folks, for the first time ever. We will see if the Pebble detects a motorbike. Something's happening. Something's happening on the screen. It is gray. It is occupied.
Oh, nice. All right, great.
Motorbike detected.
Yeah.
Nice. Good job, little Pebble.
Great.
I'm Well, I'm super jealous you got to see the Pebbles in action.
You should be, Eric. Pebbles are just one way that cities could start to get data more affordably, which can help them allocate street space for the right use at the right time.
And there's potential for more than that too, though. I mean, you can imagine cities using that data to help people get around. Like they could tell your smartphone, hey, there's a parking spot over there. And if you want to park there, it's going to cost you this much right now.
Or it could tell you, hey, this street is actually closed right now because, let's say, curbside dining has been expanded into the street, so you should take another route.
Right. There's a lot that can happen in terms of communication once you have that digital layer in place, which frankly you need if you're going to make streets truly flexible, right? The more you want to share the street between cars, people, shops, any other use, the more that communication piece becomes key. Otherwise, things get chaotic, even dangerous.
Totally, which is why it's important to think about how we can communicate information using the street itself, right? Because, right now we can put up signs or, sawhorses, maybe paint, which can do a lot, but it's not enough if you potentially want a street to change uses multiple times, even in one day.
Right, and that's actually something other folks at Sidewalk have been thinking about for quite some time. Things like digital signs that can convey new rules of a street much more dynamically. Or, you'll remember from season 1, this idea that lighted pavement could be used to indicate a specific use.
And actually, the streets team here at Sidewalk have been working on a pilot project, a street lab, to bring just these ideas to life.
So in addition to the LED pavement and the digital signage, we also have vehicle presence detection sensors embedded in the pavement.
Oh, those are going to be the Pebbles.
Those are going to be the Pebbles.
I know about those because I tested them out with Nick Jonas on a motorcycle over there.
So.
Yeah.
That's Siqi Zhu, Associate Director of Planning and Delivery at Sidewalk, and he met me at an industrial zone in Brooklyn, where the street lab is currently under construction. It didn't look like much, just a few hundred square feet alongside a sidewalk next to a brewery. But Siqi showed me what to look out for, like the small bumps along the edges that would help people with visual impairments navigate, the places where digital signage would soon go, and even a mock-up that showed how they were going to glue down these LED lights down onto the street surface. With all these innovations working together, Siqi thinks a lot could be possible. And Eric, I am going to take you through these innovations. I'm going to take you through a day in the near future of the street lab. Are you ready?
I can't wait. I'm ready for this future.
Let's go. Okay, so it's 9 a.m. sometime spring 2021. It's a beautiful hypothetical day. And you're standing on this street corner. And there are LED lights flashing red under your feet. And a digital sign would be there too saying, no parking.
Got it. Not gonna park.
Good, no parking. But Siqi did say that drop off and pick up, that would be okay. Because that allows for a lot more people who are coming in for work to get dropped off efficiently.
Got it. So after rush hour is ended, though, everyone's gotten to work, I'd imagine the sign changes.
Correct, right. The lights under your feet would then turn green, maybe, and the sign would say, come on over, you can park here.
Right, at least until the end of the day, maybe around 5 o'clock, when you probably need that pickup and drop-off zone again.
Exactly.
All right, so what's after that?
So Siqi and the team are actually imagining something pretty fun.
Around evenings, after the sort of peak pickup and drop-off has occurred, we imagine making the space available for adjacent businesses to take over as outdoor seating, dining space.
Right, because I see this brewery right here has tables and chairs out already on the sidewalk. So you could imagine once this extends out and the signage says, hey, no parking here right now, or for the next few hours, and the lights are like no parking here, then this could become more outdoor dining space.
Yep, exactly.
It sounds great, but it also sounds like a lot to ask of cities. This is a bigger infrastructure lift than just sticking down a pebble, right? Will cities make that shift?
I think they will. Think about what we've learned in our conversations, not just with Sam, but with Mitch and Dawn, right? Because of COVID, cities and streets are already shifting in this direction.
This place looks really different.
How so?
I see people walking down the middle of the street without having cars behind them honking their horn. That's unusual for Dwyer Street.
That's fan favorite sidewalker Willa Eng. You might remember her from season 1, episode 3, on adaptive traffic lights.
Of course you remember Willa. We donned our masks and met up with her in New York City's Chinatown, where she grew up. And Willa was astonished by the recent changes in her old neighborhood.
Have We've got people who are just sitting at tables in the middle of the roadway. This is great.
Restaurants had set up dining platforms where the street parking used to be. Cars were still passing through, but they were actually abiding the 5-mile-per-hour speed limit.
When vehicles are traveling at 5 miles an hour, which is the speed that someone can walk briskly or jog, that vehicle is no longer threatening. And I think you can kind of see that that's happening right now. So I think that this kind of proves that case that I've always posited, that your business can thrive without people being able to drive directly to your front door. What we need is more outdoor space for dining. We need more people walking to our location. I hope that that's what sticks in the mind of these business owners. You know, historically, the Chinese restaurant owners have been really resistant to getting rid of parking.
Oh yeah, like if we had said this like a year ago, that this was going to be the happening here on the street, we would have been like, no way,
No
never
way.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And yet here we are.
Does it feel like you would have wanted it to feel?
No, it doesn't exactly. I think I wanted there to be a bit more porousness between, you know, the pedestrian and the cafe seating zone and the vehicular zones.
What do you mean by that?
There's generally still this part is mine, that part is yours. And I can see why that needs to be the case right now, but I feel like if people got used to it, you could actually get rid of these barriers and have much more sort of an undefined line between where the pedestrians are and the cars are.
So Willa is basically describing the idea behind the Street Lab here.
Yeah, and like Siqi told me, the whole goal of the lights, the digital signs, the pieces of the Street Lab is just to make streets like these just feel more comfortable for everybody so they can feel like they really belong to everyone.
We can really kind of reset the balance between the pedestrian and vehicular nature of the street with a system like this. And that's the aspiration anyway. I do think this flexibility opens up the possibilities for sharing the space more equitably.
This moment is clearly an opportunity to get to that vision of a more equitably shared street. But a lot's going to have to happen before we can get there.
Right. We need street design that encourages drivers to slow down and share the road. We need sensors so we understand what's happening at the street level, who needs what when. We need some sort of digital layer to help cities make sense of that data and make decisions and rules. And then we need some physical infrastructure so the street itself can interface with people and let them know, hey, this street is actually for parking right now, or unloading trucks, or eating, or dancing, or skiing, or whatever.
It's definitely a lot, but it's also exactly what cities need to be working toward.
Yeah, and actually, Eric, there is one more thing, and it's probably the most important one. As our colleague Willa likes to point out, what we really need is to come together and agree that a shared street is what we want for the future of our cities.
I think that we have to agree to the premise that the street is to be shared first. I think that that's sort of the number one battle, is to say, A, we have this amount of concrete and asphalt, and instead of it being segregated into here's where the pedestrians are, here's where the cars are, here's where the parking is, that we're much more fluid with all of it, and that we should be allocating space to whoever needs it the most at the time, then allocate that space fairly, and not just to whoever has the loudest voice.
Thank you for listening to City of the Future, a podcast from Sidewalk Labs. Your hosts are Vanessa Quirk and me, Eric Jaffe. We're produced by Benjamin Walker and Andrew Calloway.
Mix is by Zach McNeese. Our music is composed by Adam James Levine Arity. If you want to hear more of his work, check out his band Lost Amsterdam at amsterdamlost.com. And special thanks for this episode goes to Sam Schwartz, Mitch Osur, Don Miller, the better Nick Jonas, Siqi Zhu, and Willa Ng.
This was our season finale, so you won't be hearing from us for a little while. But you can keep up with Vanessa and me through the Sidewalk Weekly newsletter, or you can send us an email at podcast@sidewalklabs.com. We always love to get listener feedback and suggestions. And if you do like the show, then please rate us on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps.
And As this is the season finale, I would like to give a shout out to Daniel Hay, Maggie Zhang, and Moto Okumura, who have helped the great Tim Cow create the art and social content for this season. And if you're not following us on Instagram already, you should, and you can see all the great content that they have created by following us at City of the Future Pod.
That's it for this season. See you in the future.